Ethan slammed the table and the chair behind him toppled over. Please don't take our mother away from us. His voice trembled, yet it carried through the courtroom. Leah shot to her feet, tears brimming in her eyes. She pointed straight at the bench. If you separate our mother, then you separate us too. Jonah's small hands shook as he held up a crumpled certificate of merit, the paper trembling under the bright lights. The judge's gavel lifted high, frozen in the air. Every eye in the room locked on him. Naomi Carter bent over the rickety washing machine, her rough hands carefully wringing out hospital uniforms stained with bleach. She still held on to old habits, checking every pocket for a pen or a needle, as if she were still on shift at the clinic. Even though her hours had been cut, she kept her name badge around her neck, a fragile charm against the world. On her left wrist, a faint scar stretched long and thin, the reminder of a night shift accident the year before. It told her plainly, if she collapsed again, her 3 children would lose everything. The apartment was so cramped that the smell of soap, mixed with the scent of fried onions, drifted in from next door. Still, Naomi fought to keep a corner neat where her children could do their homework. Missing 1 month's rent would give their landlord, Victor Hale, the excuse he needed to evict them. What was at stake wasn't just a roof, it was their family. A pounding knock rattled the door. Victor appeared, tall and lean, a glowing cigar pinched between 2 fingers. His cold gaze swept across the children's drawings taped to the wall, then fixed on Naomi as she wiped her trembling hands. 10 days, he said flatly, his crooked smile cutting deep. A thick, white envelope slid into her grasp, an official notice. Naomi hurried into Delgado Laundry, her employee badge dangling against her chest. Sweat clung to her forehead, yet she forced a smile. Piles of clothes stacked high like walls around her. At the far end, her 3 children sat squeezed onto a plastic chair, school books open, glancing up between math problems to watch their mother. Naomi! Mrs. Delgado's voice cracked like a hammer. She stepped out from behind the counter, dyed red hair pulled tight, nails tapping sharply against the ledger. You brought the kids again? This isn't an orphanage. The whole shop went still. A man waiting for his pressed shirts raised a brow, then smirked. Naomi froze, her hands still damp with soap suds. School let out early. I couldn't find anyone to watch them. Mrs. Delgado snatched Naomi's badge and held it up close to the customer's face. See this? We're a professional laundry, yet my staff turns it into a classroom. Whispered laughter rippled through the room. Ethan clenched his teeth, ready to stand, but Leah tugged him back. Naomi's cheeks burned, her back stiff as if pinned to the wall. I'll keep them quiet. They won't make a sound. Not a sound? Delgado slammed her ledger. You still owe me 3 shifts, and I've had complaints. White coats returned with stains. Here, read it yourself. She fanned out a complaint letter, the signature bold at the bottom. The doctor's coat still smelled of disinfectant. Quality unacceptable. Naomi's throat tightened. That was the night she left early to rush Jonah to the ER with a raging fever. She had washed in haste, leaving the scent behind. Now in front of everyone, her desperation was branded as carelessness. Mrs. Delgado tossed the ledger onto the counter with a loud smack that made the children jump. You're not fit to work here anymore. Pack up, Naomi. Don't make me say it twice. Naomi swayed, fighting back tears. Ethan muttered under his breath, loud enough to carry. She doesn't know how hard Mom works. Delgado's eyes flashed. I heard that, boy. Here, your mother's just another worker. She's no hero. The air pressed heavily. Naomi lowered her head and guided her children out, past stairs laced with pity and scorn. Her badge slipped to the floor, left behind without notice. The cold wind whipped through the row of old apartments as they walked home. Naomi clutched the laundry bag tight, her hands shaking. Leah tried to smile. It's okay, Mom. I'll read you a poem. But her voice cracked into sobs. Their apartment was pitch dark. The power had already been cut. Ethan rummaged through a desk drawer for a pencil and pulled out a worn yellow envelope. Faded script scrawled across the front. Samuel. What's this, Mom? Ethan asked, holding it up. Naomi snatched it quickly, her face drained of color. A letter peeked out, its words stark. Naomi, my family will never accept this. I'm sorry. Leah's mouth fell open. Jonah stared wide-eyed. Ethan's voice grew hard. Who's Samuel? Why's he apologizing? The candle on the table flickered. Naomi stood silent, the letter crushed tight in her hand. The window rattled in the night wind as her three children fixed their eyes on her, waiting for a truth she wasn't ready to speak. The cramped apartment flickered in candlelight. The four of them had barely caught their breath from the letter when a pounding rattled the door. It wasn't knocking, it was fists slamming, loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. Naomi jumped, shoving the envelope into her apron. The door burst open. Victor Hale, the landlord, stepped in with a tall woman in a gray suit, as if he had been invited. Naomi Carter? The woman's voice was clipped, her clipboard pressed tight under one arm. I'm Ms. Rivera with Social Services. I've received reports that this apartment isn't safe for children. Naomi froze. Victor folded his arms and smirked, cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling. Just doing my civic duty. I don't want these poor kids growing up in filth and neglect. Ethan exploded, stepping in front of his mother. She works herself to the bone every day. You don't know anything, Rivera jotted down notes quickly. The child shows defiance. The family environment is tense. Leah burst into tears. We don't want to go anywhere. This is our home. Her cries carried down the hallway, neighbors peeking out and whispering. Naomi fought to steady her voice. Miss Rivera, please. Give me more time. I'm looking for work. The rent will be paid. Victor cut in at once. Don't believe her. Time's up. 10 days and I'll have the eviction order. He pulled a photocopy from his pocket and thrust it forward. Notice of eviction, past due rent. The room thickened with dread. Naomi swallowed hard, her children clinging tight to her arms. The stakes had shifted. She wasn't just at risk of losing her job. She could lose her children. Jonah tugged at her sleeve, holding up a handful of school certificates. She helps me study. I get good grades. My mom's a good person. Rivera glanced briefly, then lowered her tone. I'll note that. But rules are rules. The words fell like iron. Naomi staggered, bracing herself against the table. Every sound pressed in. The scratch of Rivera's pen, Victor's smug snort, the ragged breaths of three frightened children. No escape. She tried to speak. Please just give me one chance. Rivera suddenly looked up, her eyes darting to the wall covered in drawings and certificates. A picture had slipped, revealing the edge of a yellow envelope identical to the one Ethan had found. Naomi went rigid, her heart hammering. Rivera stepped closer. Victor squinted with curiosity. Naomi lunged to cover it, hands trembling as she pressed the picture back flat. Panic flashed in her eyes. Rivera paused, then added a line to her report. Mother shows signs of withholding information. The children didn't understand, but Naomi did. The secret was no longer safe. Closing beat. Her eyes dropped to another envelope, half hidden under the table, shivering in the draft from the open door. Her gaze froze, cold sweat trickling down. And the audience knew, if that letter were discovered, everything would explode. Naomi hadn't slept all night, her mind spinning with the social worker's report. By morning, she was summoned to an emergency hearing at the county hall. The room was packed, a long wooden table stretching beneath a clock that ticked loudly in the silence. At the far end, Victor Hale sat with arms crossed, eyes gleaming as if waiting for Naomi to collapse. Beside him, Miss Rivera set her file on the table, her face unreadable. Naomi's hands shook as she placed her cloth bag down. Ethan leaned close and whispered, Mom, don't let them tear you down again. Leah gripped her hand tight while Jonah clutched his notebook like a lifeline. The tension was so heavy that even a slight cough echoed unnaturally loud. The chair of the hearing cleared his throat. We'll review the Carter family's conditions today. Any evidence related to their welfare may be presented here. Victor sprang to his feet, holding out a stack of photocopies. Here are the debt notices. Proof Naomi Carter's been late for months. Her kids run wild in the halls, disturbing neighbors. I have witnesses. He glanced around and whispers stirred, a few heads nodding in agreement. Naomi's voice caught in her throat. Before she could respond, Jonah jumped up, pulling a crumpled packet from his bag. I have evidence. He unfolded a certificate of achievement, the grades clearly stamped, the elementary school seal in red ink. My mom teaches me every night. This is real. This proves it. The room fell still. Rivera stepped forward, examining the paper under the light. The ink was still fresh, the corners smudged with food stains. She nodded once. This document is valid. A stir ran through the chamber. For the first time in days, a flicker of hope lit Naomi's eyes. But Victor sneered and shot up again. One paper doesn't change the truth. I've got a recording. He pulled out his phone and hit play. Naomi's voice filled the room, raw and broken. I can't do this anymore. Maybe my kids will be taken away. The air froze. Naomi staggered, her face drained of color. It was her confession, whispered in exhaustion to a neighbor, recorded, then passed to Victor. Rivera scribbled quickly. Mother admits limited ability to provide care. The hope that had just bloomed was crushed. Ethan roared, that was when she was desperate. It's not the truth. The chair struck the gavel, demanding silence. Naomi swallowed hard, tears brimming. A small hand slipped into hers. Leah's voice soft but fierce. Mom, don't fall. If you fall, we lose everything. Naomi drew a deep breath, ready to speak. But the door swung open. A young man entered, holding a sealed envelope. Sorry to interrupt, but we've received supplemental evidence from Cuyahoga County Court. Every head turned. Naomi's pulse raced as the envelope was handed to the chair. Papers unfolded, revealing familiar slanted handwriting. Naomi, I can't be a father now. My family will never accept this. Naomi went pale, the blood rushing from her face. The children stared at one another, their expressions collapsing in dread. The room stiffened, thick with silence. The chair frowned, about to speak, when Miss Rivera's voice cut through. Steady, measured, and sharp as a gavel. It appears the children's biological father is still alive. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Naomi's lips parted, but before she could say a word, the gavel struck the table. The moment hung suspended, everything shattering, yet nothing resolved. Naomi stood frozen, her eyes locked on the letter lying on the wooden table. The trembling handwriting, signed Samuel Ward, cut straight into her heart like a blade. The room grew heavier, filled only with the rustle of papers and scattered whispers. Ethan's fist clenched, his eyes red. Leah bit her lip until it bled. Jonah hugged his notebook, his forehead damp with sweat. The chair struck the gavel softly. Mrs. Carter, do you have any explanation for this letter? Naomi rose unsteadily, her voice hoarse. It's the past I wanted buried. But yes, he's the biological father of my children. Gasps rippled. Chairs scraped harshly against the floor. Victor laughed under his breath, clapping slowly in mock applause. Remarkable. And all this time, everyone thought those kids never had a father. Naomi's throat tightened, but Ethan suddenly stood, his voice slicing the air. She never hid it to deceive us. She hid it to protect us. The words thundered across the room. Rivera faltered, her eyes flickering with doubt. The chair gave a slight nod, then motioned for more evidence. The courier stepped forward again. In addition to the letter, the court has received copies of the children's original birth certificates. Samuel Ward is listed as the legal father, though he's never publicly acknowledged it. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Naomi gripped the chair, her face drained of color. Leah wept against her shoulder. Jonah whispered, I suspected, but I never thought. The gavel struck again. The chair spoke firmly. If this is true, the situation changes entirely. We must consider finances, extended family, and legal responsibility. Naomi swayed but forced herself upright. He may have wealth and power, but he's never held them once. Never fed them a single meal. Every document you call evidence only proves he abandoned them. The air burned with tension. A reporter's recorder light blinked red in the corner. Victor tilted his head back and laughed. Fine words. But the court deals in facts. And the fact is, the father is alive. He could walk through that door at any moment. Naomi turned to Rivera, trembling. You've been a mother. You understand. Don't let them take my children because a man suddenly feels like making amends. Rivera's lips pressed tight. Her pen paused over the page. She didn't answer. Then the back door swung open. Leather shoes struck the floor with each deliberate step. Step. A man in a black suit entered, silver threading his dark hair, his face gaunt yet severe. Murmurs surged through the chamber. Ethan stared, his hand gripping the edge of the table until it bled. Leah whispered, "It's him." Naomi drew a breath, her voice breaking. "Samuel Ward." He stopped, his gaze sweeping over the three children. His chest hitched as if pierced. The entire room went still, every breath held. The gavel fell, but its sound drowned in the shock. Naomi stepped back, wrapping her arms around her children. "You have no right," she hissed. "You left us for 7 years. What more do you want?" Samuel spoke, his voice low and trembling. I was wrong, but they're my blood. I can't stay away any longer." Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "You were never our father? A real father doesn't disappear and come back like this." The chamber erupted. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. The chair hammered the gavel. Rivera gripped her pen tight, her eyes conflicted. Naomi gasped for breath, her body trembling on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, Leah stood tall, her voice broken yet fierce. "If you're really our father, where were you when Mom cried from hunger? When we shivered without heat? Where were you?" Her sobs echoed, raw and unrelenting. Samuel's face drained, his body recoiling, yet he forced out, "Give me a chance." Naomi shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Rivera dropped her pen at last, her words slicing through the uproar. "Perhaps the court must order a DNA test immediately." Silence swallowed the room. Naomi swayed, her children clutching her hands tight, and the audience was left suspended in shock. The truth revealed, but the battle only beginning. The courthouse chamber was packed. White light poured down from high chandeliers, catching every dust mote drifting in the thick air. A low murmur swelled like an undertow, then cut off as the gavel struck hard. The press gallery was crammed, camera flashes sparking without pause. 3 children sat pressed against their mother, their hands clasped into one trembling circle. Victor Hale rose first, his shoes pounding against the wooden floor. He cleared his throat, a smirk twisting his mouth. "Your Honor, I'll testify. That woman owes months of rent. The apartment is dark and filthy. The children run wild, crying all night. Every neighbor knows. This is the truth." He waved a stack of photocopies in the air. "Complaint reports from neighbors. Anyone who wants to see, I've got copies." A few heads leaned forward, whispers spreading. Cameras snapped relentlessly. Naomi drew a deep breath and forced herself to stand. Her voice trembled, yet it carried. "He's telling half the truth. Yes, I've fallen behind on rent, but I still feed my children, still keep our home clean." Victor burst into sharp laughter that echoed across the chamber. "Clean? I've seen trash strewn in the hallway, damp clothes hanging moldy on the balcony. That's how they live. And she calls that fit to raise children?" The crowd erupted, whispers giving way to a swarm. Stares pressed down on Naomi's back until it bent. Leah clutched her sleeve, whispering, "Don't be afraid, Mom." But Naomi could only see her daughter's eyes glistening with fear. Her hands shook as she reached into her cloth bag and pulled out wrinkled pages. "These are Jonah's academic certificates. Outstanding scores. If I didn't study with him every night, how could he earn these?" She held the papers up. A camera flash caught the glossy edge of the page. For a moment, the room hushed. Then Victor barked out another laugh. "One piece of paper? Your Honor, can one paper save 3 children? What they need is a stable home, financial stability, and order. And she's nothing but a failed mother." The last words struck Naomi like a slap. The chamber roared. Some shook their heads, others sighed in pity. Naomi staggered, her hands trembling violently, vision blurring. She wanted to shout, but her throat locked tight. The gavel hammered for order, but the humiliation had already sunk deep. All 3 children rose at once. Ethan's teeth clenched. "Don't call our mother a failure." Jonah raised his notebook high, his voice cracking. "She helps me with every word, every problem." "She's never abandoned us," Leah cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks. "If you lie again, everyone here will see the truth." Their voices cut through the chamber like lightning. The crowd froze, stunned. A few reporters lowered their cameras, staring instead. The gavel struck, but the chair's eyes betrayed hesitation. Naomi pulled her children close, whispering, "Quiet, please. We can't win with tears." Victor stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the family of four. He leaned down, his voice low but clear enough for the microphones. "Stop fighting, Naomi. Today, you lose them. Right here." Naomi faltered, her foot slipping. She would have fallen if Ethan hadn't caught her. A burst of flashes captured the image of a mother teetering, fragile, almost defeated. The chamber was ready to explode when suddenly the doors flung open. Footsteps struck fast against the floor. A court officer hurried forward, carrying a thick envelope sealed in red, and placed it directly on the judge's bench. "Your Honor, this is newly submitted evidence for the case. It relates directly to the children's parentage." The entire room held its breath. The seal tore open. The judge scanned the pages, then froze, his grip tightening. Cameras fell silent. Reporters lowered their pens. The atmosphere congealed, waiting. And then Rivera, silent since the beginning, rose to her feet. Her voice rang out, firm and commanding. "There's something everyone needs to hear. Right now." The chamber fell into a deathly stillness. Every eye locked on her, waiting for the words that would follow. The courtroom felt suffocating. Every eye was locked on the envelope, just torn open. The judge held the papers, his voice dropping low. "In these documents is a new detail, a copy of the lease agreement and a repair request for the heating system. The signature doesn't belong to Mrs. Carter. It belongs to Mr. Victor Hale." The chamber erupted. Naomi's head shot up, her eyes blazing. "That's right. I filed repair requests 6 times and he ignored them. He took the rent but never fixed the heat, leaving my children shivering all winter." Victor's face drained of color. He snapped back quickly. "That's a forgery." "She's making this up." From the back row, a neighbor woman stood, clutching a yellowed packet of papers. "I kept a copy. I signed as a witness when Mrs. Carter filed those requests. This is my signature." She passed the papers forward under the eyes of the entire chamber. The noise fell into silence. Every head turned toward Victor. He fidgeted, sweat beading on his forehead. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled furiously. Naomi gripped her children's hands, her voice steady now. "He says I raised them in hardship, but it was his neglect that stripped us of basic safety. In winter, I boiled water on the stove to keep them warm. And still, they went to school with their homework done. That's not carelessness. That's survival." A wave of voices rose. Gasps, nods, even tears. The crowd shifted, doubt giving way to sympathy. Victor flushed red, ready to argue, but the gavel struck sharp as steel. "Enough," the judge said. "The evidence is clear. You concealed your responsibility and slandered this mother in open court." Naomi drew a deep breath and stepped into the center of the floor. The light poured down, her frail figure standing tall like a pillar. Her voice rang out, firm and resonant. "You can weigh papers and signatures, but don't forget, the truest witnesses are these 3 children. Every perfect score, every certificate, every tear, they prove their mother was there, every day." Leah rose, her voice breaking but strong. "We don't need promises from someone who abandoned us. We need justice for our mother." Ethan slammed his palm on the table, his eyes blazing. "You can call us poor, but don't you dare call her a failure." Jonah lifted his notebook high, trembling. "She wrote in the margins of every math problem I solved. This is my evidence." The chamber exploded. Applause mixed with sobs. Cameras flashed nonstop. The judge stood, his voice choked. "Order! But today we've witnessed the truth. And truth needs no embellishment." Naomi collapsed into her children's arms, holding them tight. Her eyes glistened, stronger than ever. The entire room rose to their feet, caught in the same breath. For a heartbeat, the noise stilled. White light shone down, illuminating mother and children huddled together in the sea of people. Naomi slowly lifted her head, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. Then her eyes froze on the back row, on a familiar face, pale and hollow, as if just unmasked. The figure leaned forward, as if ready to rise. The air turned to stone. Naomi parted her lips, but the words never left her mouth. The echoes of applause still rolled through the courtroom. Naomi held her 3 children close, her breath unsteady but her eyes brighter than ever. The judge declared custody awarded to Naomi Carter, with a recommendation for housing and steady employment support from the county's social fund. Victor Hale collapsed into his chair, his face drained of color. The crowd had seen him for what he was, a man who twisted power to smear a mother's name. As officers escorted him out, some neighbors who once sneered now lowered their heads, avoiding Naomi's gaze. Naomi said nothing. She bowed her head slightly, choosing silence over any show of triumph. Outside the courthouse, the gray sky bled into evening light. Hundreds pressed forward, cameras raised, hands waving. Ethan, Leah, and Jonah clung to their mother's hands, their eyes tired yet proud. A reporter leaned in, calling out, "Mrs. Carter, how do you feel right now?" Naomi paused. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "I didn't defeat anyone. I only kept my family. And that is enough." For a long breath, the crowd went still. Then applause erupted again, rising like waves. That night, the apartment was still small, the light still dim. But the air was different. The three children sat around the table, holding simple bowls of rice, their eyes glowing. Ethan whispered, "Mom, tomorrow I'll tell my teacher. He'll believe me when I say I spoke the truth." Leah leaned against her mother's shoulder. "I'll write a poem about today. So everyone knows you're the strongest." Jonah carefully stacked his certificates, guarding them as if they were treasures. Naomi wiped her eyes and smiled. "You are my strength." On the table, a wrapped package appeared. Rivera, who had watched quietly all along, placed it down. "This is from our emergency fund. But there's something else." She pulled out a worn silver bracelet. "When I was a single mother, I kept this to remind myself I wasn't alone. Now I want you to have it." Naomi froze. A tear slid down. Not of despair, but of understanding. Her hands shook as she accepted it. The next morning, Victor appeared at her door. Gone was the polished suit. He stood hunched, holding an envelope. The children stiffened, but Naomi motioned for them to remain calm. Victor drew a breath, his voice tight. I'm sorry. I was wrong. This is the rent money I withheld. It should have been yours. I don't ask for forgiveness. I only want to return it." Naomi stared at the envelope, then gave a slight nod. "Money can be repaid, but they leave scars. Remember that." Victor bowed his head and walked away. In the days that followed, the storm began to settle. A community group helped Naomi secure steady work at a nearby health center. The apartment's heating was repaired. The children put on clean uniforms and went back to school with heads held high. One weekend afternoon, the four of them sat together on a park bench. Ethan tossed a ball, Leah read her new poem, Jonah scribbled in his notebook. Naomi watched, her smile overflowing. In the distance, a figure stood, Samuel Ward, hair silver, eyes heavy. He didn't approach. He only left an envelope on a bench, then walked away. Inside was an old photo, a young Naomi holding a newborn. On the back, in slanted handwriting, "I'm sorry. If I could begin again, I'd choose to stay." S.W. Naomi held the photo for a long time. Then she folded it and tucked it deep in her bag. Not to forgive, but to close the chapter. That night in the small apartment, Naomi lit a single candle. Her three children gathered close. The flame flickered, their shadows merging into one. Naomi whispered, "Blood may name a family, but only love can raise one." Ethan, Leah, and Jonah answered together, "We are a family." Outside, the noise of traffic faded. Inside, there was warmth and hands held tight. Justice doesn't always come from laws or power, but from love and the strength to protect what matters most. Some wounds never vanish, but they can become the foundation for moving forward. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments below. That's how we keep faith in love, in justice, and in the small families who stand firm through every storm. And don't forget to follow for more stories. Each one a reminder that love always outlasts injustice. The candle still burned, even as the wind howled outside. Inside the small apartment, there was home, and hands that never let go.